My name is Ava Reynolds. I'm 31. At 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening in late September, my mother walked into my company's conference room, looked at the 30 employees and investors seated around the table, and said the words that made my blood freeze. Sign over 50% of your company to Daniel, or I'll destroy everything you've built by morning. She wasn't yelling. That was the terrifying part. Her voice was calm, measured, like she was ordering coffee. My father stood beside her, arms crossed, that same look of disappointment he'd perfected over 3 decades. And Daniel, my older brother, leaned against the doorframe with that smirk I'd seen 1,000 times before, the one that said he'd already won. My lead engineer, Marcus Chen, sat 2 seats to my left. His eyes went wide. Our newest investor, Patricia Holloway, who just committed $4.2 million 3 weeks ago, gripped her pen so hard I heard it crack. The room went completely silent except for the hum of the projector I'd been using to present our Q3 security audit results. "Excuse me?" I managed to say. My throat felt like I'd swallowed glass. "You heard me perfectly, Ava." My mother's eyes were cold. She'd always had this way of looking at you like you were something stuck to her shoe. "Daniel is the reason this company exists. He taught you everything you know about business. It's only fair he gets what he's owed." Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. The thing is, 4 years ago, my family didn't just cut me off. They erased me, like I'd never existed. And the reason? I'd committed the unforgivable sin of calling out my brother's lies. Let me take you back 4 years to March 2022. Daniel and I were supposed to be co-founders of a fintech startup called SecureVault. I'd spent 18 months coding the core security architecture, every line, every protocol, every encryption algorithm. I was 27, fresh out of a cybersecurity position at a tech firm, and stupid enough to trust family. We had our first investor pitch scheduled for a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I showed up at 8:30 with my laptop ready to demo the system I'd built. Daniel was already there. So was our potential investor, Richard Tompkins, a venture capitalist out of San Francisco with $50 million in available capital. "Ava, you're late," Daniel said, even though I was 30 minutes early. "Richard and I have been discussing the technical architecture." I sat down, confused. "Okay, should I pull up the—" "I've already shown him everything," Daniel interrupted. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The encryption protocols, the blockchain integration, the penetration testing framework. Richard loves it." Something cold settled in my stomach. "You showed him? Daniel, you don't even know how the back end works." Richard Tompkins leaned forward. "Your brother is remarkably talented, Ms. Reynolds. This is some of the most sophisticated security infrastructure I've seen in years." "My brother didn't build it." The words came out before I could stop them. "I did. Every single line of code. Daniel handles business development." Daniel's face didn't change, but his voice got quieter. That's how I knew he was about to lie. "Ava, I appreciate your contributions to the front-end interface, but let's not exaggerate your role here." "Front-end interface?" I felt my hands start to shake. "Daniel, you can't even code. You majored in marketing." "I taught myself," he said smoothly. "Late nights, online courses. You wouldn't know because you were always too busy with your friends to notice." He turned to Richard. "My sister struggles with taking credit for other people's work. It's been a pattern since we were kids." I pulled out my laptop. "I can prove it. Git commits, code authorship, documentation." "Richard doesn't have time for your insecurity, Ava." Daniel stood up, extending his hand to the investor. "Let's grab coffee and discuss terms. My sister gets emotional about these things." They left, just walked out while I sat there with my laptop open, staring at 18 months of my work displayed on the screen. The commit history that showed my username on every single file. The documentation I'd written at 2 a.m. The bug fixes, the security patches, the entire system architecture. Richard Tompkins funded Daniel's solo venture with $3 million 2 weeks later. The company tanked in 8 months. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I told my parents what happened. I drove to their house in Bellevue on a Sunday afternoon, March 19th at 2:15 p.m. They were having lunch on the patio. The sun was shining. My mother was wearing her pearl earrings. "Daniel stole my work," I said. No preamble, no small talk. He took credit for 18 months of coding and pitched it as his own to an investor. My father set down his fork. "That's a serious accusation, Ava." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I can show you the—" "Your brother says you've been struggling with jealousy ever since he got his MBA. My mother's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "He mentioned you might come to us with something like this." I actually laughed. It came out strangled. "Jealousy? Mom, I built that entire system. My name is on every commit. Daniel said you'd claim that too," she sighed. "Sweetheart, I know it's hard watching your older brother succeed, but making up stories isn't going to—" "I'm not making up anything," my voice cracked. "Why would I lie about this?" My father stood up. "Because you've always been competitive with Daniel. Ever since you were children. He gets an award, you need one too. He gets accepted to business school, suddenly you want to go too. Now he's secured major funding and you can't stand it." "That's not— I've never—" I couldn't get the words out. My face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. "I think you should leave," my mother said quietly, "until you're ready to apologize to your brother for trying to sabotage his success." I left. I drove home to my apartment in Capitol Hill, sat on my couch for 40 minutes without moving, and then I cried until I threw up. Daniel's company collapsed in November 2022. 8 months, $3 million gone, 0 products shipped. The investor, Richard Tompkins, lost everything he'd put in. I found out through LinkedIn. I wasn't invited to the funeral of the company I'd actually built. But here's what I didn't know then. Daniel didn't just fail once. Over the next year, he started 2 more companies with different investors. Used the same pattern: big promises, flashy pitches, 0 technical knowledge. Both companies closed within 18 months. Total investor losses, $2.4 million across both ventures. And the whole time, my family treated me like I didn't exist. No birthday calls, no Christmas invitations. My mother saw me at a grocery store in July 2023 and walked past me like I was a stranger. My father blocked my number. I thought I'd lost my family over telling the truth. Turns out, I'd just removed the people who'd never really seen me at all. So I built my own company, from nothing. I took the security architecture I'd designed, the one Daniel had stolen credit for, and I rebuilt it better, stronger. I called it Cipher Guard. I worked 3 jobs to fund it: coding freelance contracts during the day, bartending Thursday through Saturday nights, and teaching weekend coding boot camps to high school students. I slept 4 hours a night for 14 months. My first client was a small Seattle law firm that needed encrypted document storage. They paid me $8,000. I used $6,500 to incorporate the business and hired my first contractor. By month 6, I had 4 clients. By month 12, I had 15. By month 18, I had 43 clients and 2 full-time employees. I never forgot what Daniel did, but I also never wasted time on revenge. I was too busy building something real. Then Patricia Holloway showed up. September 2025. She walked into my office. I'd finally rented a real space in the Belltown district and said she wanted to invest $4.2 million for 15% equity. CipherGuard was worth $28 million on paper. I'd done it. Self-funded, self-made, 0 help from anyone except the incredible team I'd hired. "Your brother reached out to me," Patricia said during our second meeting. "Daniel Reynolds. Says he's your co-founder?" My stomach dropped. "He's not. He's my brother. We're not in business together." That's what I thought. His story had holes. I did my research. She smiled. "I invest in founders who build real things, Ava. not people who take credit for other people's work. I hired Patricia's recommended financial auditor the next day. Not because I didn't trust my own books, I'd kept meticulous records, but because something told me Daniel wasn't done. If he'd contacted Patricia claiming co-founder status, he was planning something bigger. The auditor's name was Michael Brennan. He was 54, former FBI forensic accountant, specialized in investor fraud. He charged $450 per hour. I paid it. I need you to look into my brother's business history, I told him at our first meeting. 3 failed companies in 2 years. I think there's something beyond incompetence. Give me 30 days, Michael said. He called me back in 18. Ava, we need to meet in person. Now. I met him at a coffee shop on Pike Street at 11:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. He had a folder 3 inches thick. Your brother didn't just fail his companies, Michael said. He systematically embezzled investor funds, $2 million total across all 3 ventures, transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I've got bank records, wire transfers, shell company registrations. He closed the companies before anyone could audit the books. I read through the documents twice. Transaction dates, account numbers, digital signatures. It was all there, documented, time-stamped, irrefutable. Why hasn't anyone prosecuted him? I asked. Because the investors never knew. He'd show them fake expense reports, claim the money went to development costs or market research. By the time they realized the companies were failing, he'd already dissolved everything. Easier to write it off as a bad investment than admit they'd been defrauded. Can we use this? Michael looked at me carefully. Depends what you mean by use. If you want him arrested, I can take this to the FBI. If you want him exposed, that's different. What do you want, Ava? I thought about my mother's voice. You've always been competitive with Daniel. I thought about my father blocking my number. I thought about 4 years of silence. I want the truth to come out, I said. I want everyone to see who he really is. Then we wait, Michael said. Men like your brother don't stop. He'll come after you next. When he does, you'll have everything you need. Michael was right. 2 weeks later, on a Monday morning at 8:14 a.m., Daniel called me for the first time in 4 years. I almost didn't answer. Ava, it's me. His voice was friendly, casual, like we'd just talked yesterday. I heard about your success with CipherGuard. I'm really proud of you. I said nothing. Listen, I know things got messy a few years ago, but I think it's time we put that behind us. You're doing incredible work. I'd love to grab coffee and talk about potential collaboration. Collaboration. I kept my voice flat. Family business, Ava. We both know cybersecurity. Imagine what we could build together. No. Silence on his end. Then, no? I'm not interested in working with you, Daniel. Come on, don't be like that. Let's at least talk about... I hung up. He showed up at my office 3 days later, Thursday afternoon, 4:30 p.m., while I was in a meeting with my engineering team. My assistant, Jordan, knocked on the conference room door. Ava, there's someone here to see you. Says he's your brother. Marcus Chen looked up. You have a brother? I'd never mentioned Daniel to anyone at work. My team knew I'd built CipherGuard from scratch, but they didn't know why. I'd kept my family situation completely private. Tell him I'm busy, I said to Jordan. He says it's urgent. Something about a family emergency? I found Daniel in the reception area, sitting in one of our modern chairs like he belonged there. He stood when he saw me, smile wide, arms open for a hug I didn't return. Ava, look at this place. Very impressive. What do you want? His smile dimmed slightly. Can we talk somewhere private? I led him to my office, closed the door, and stood with my arms crossed. I didn't offer him a seat. I'll be direct, Daniel said. I want 50% of CipherGuard. I actually laughed. Excuse me? I taught you everything you know about business. The pitch strategies, the investor relations, the market positioning. Without my guidance over the years, you never would have built this company. Your guidance? Daniel, you stole my work and took credit for it. Then you failed 3 companies in 2 years. Now you want half of mine? That's not how I remember it. His voice got quieter, there was the tell. And I don't think your new investor, Patricia Holloway, would appreciate knowing that the self-made founder she backed actually built her core technology while working under my mentorship at Secure Vault. That's a lie, is it? Because I can tell Patricia a very different story about our history, about how you stole proprietary code from a joint venture we worked on together, about how you've always had issues with honesty and boundaries. He leaned against my desk. I can make one phone call, Ava. Patricia pulls her funding, your company implodes, and you're back to bartending by Christmas. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to sign the partnership agreement, Daniel continued. I've already had my lawyer draw it up. 50-50 split, equal decision-making power, joint control of all intellectual property. Or I call Patricia and tell her exactly who she's really invested in. He left a manila folder on my desk and walked out. I stood there for 5 minutes after he was gone. Then I picked up my phone and called Michael Brennan. He made his move, I said. I need you to accelerate the timeline. How fast? We're presenting our quarterly results to the full company next Tuesday. All hands meeting. 60 people in the room, including investors, engineering staff, managers, and our legal team. I want him there. I want everyone there. Ava, are you sure about this? I looked at the manila folder Daniel had left. Partnership agreement. My name next to his on equal footing. 4 years of silence weaponized into blackmail. I've never been more sure of anything. Michael worked nonstop for 6 days. He compiled bank records, wire transfer receipts, shell company registrations, investor communications, and testimony from 2 of Daniel's former business partners who'd been willing to talk once they learned they weren't the only victims. The evidence folder grew to 347 pages. I invited Daniel to the all-hands meeting personally, called him on Thursday morning, kept my voice steady. I've been thinking about your offer, I said. I want you to come to our quarterly presentation on Tuesday, 6 p.m. You should hear what you'd be getting into. Smart decision, Ava. Family first, right? Right, I said, and hung up before my voice could break. Tuesday, September 24th, 6 p.m. The conference hall at our office building was packed. 63 people total. My entire engineering team, the sales staff, our operations manager, our legal counsel, Rebecca Martinez, Patricia Holloway, and 2 other investors, and various department heads. I'd had Jordan set up extra chairs. Daniel arrived at 6:08 p.m. with both our parents. I hadn't expected that. Mom and Dad walked in like they owned the place, taking seats in the second row. My mother was wearing her pearl earrings. My father had on his navy blazer, the one he wore to important events. Marcus Chen leaned over. That's your family? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Daniel caught my eye from across the room and smiled. That same smirk. He thought he'd won. He thought I'd called him here to announce our partnership in front of everyone, to lock myself into the agreement publicly so I couldn't back out. I stood up and walked to the front of the room. The projector was already on, showing our company logo. My hands were steady. My throat was dry, but my voice worked. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. I know we usually do these quarterly presentations on Thursday afternoons, but I have something special to share, something that goes beyond our Q3 numbers. I clicked to the next slide. It showed a simple title, The Truth About CipherGuard's Foundation. Daniel's smile flickered. 4 years ago, I continued, I built a security architecture system that would eventually become the foundation for this company. I did it while working on a startup called Secure Vault with my brother Daniel. I coded every line, I designed every protocol, I documented every security feature. I clicked again. The screen showed Git commit logs. Thousands of lines with my username. Timestamps going back to late 2021. My brother took credit for that work. He pitched it to an investor as his own creation. The investor gave him $3 million. The company failed in 8 months. The room was completely silent. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, burning. That was the first time, I said, but not the last. Next slide, a timeline of Daniel's 3 companies. Secure Vault, DataBridge, and Cloud Shield, all closed within 2 years. What I didn't know until recently was that my brother didn't just fail these companies through incompetence, he systematically defrauded his investors. I nodded to Michael Brennan, who was standing by the door. He walked to the front and stood next to me. This is Michael Brennan, forensic accountant and former FBI investigator. Michael, would you present your findings? Daniel stood up. Ava, what are you doing? Sit down, Daniel. My voice didn't waver. Michael took over the presentation. Each slide was more damning than the last. Bank statements showing $2 million transferred from investor accounts to offshore holdings. Shell company registrations in the Cayman Islands under Daniel's name. Email communications showing him lying to investors about expense reports. Wire transfer receipts time-stamped during the period when he claimed the money was going to software development. But the transfers went to personal accounts. My mother's face had gone white. My father sat frozen. These documents, Michael continued, show a clear pattern of investor fraud across 3 separate ventures. The total amount embezzled was $2,047,000. The offshore accounts were opened using falsified business documents. The expense reports provided to investors were fabricated. Daniel's face was red. This is bullshit. You can't. I'm not finished, Michael said calmly. He clicked to the next slide. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Reynolds approached his sister Ava with an extortion demand. He threatened to slander her to her primary investor unless she signed over 50% ownership of CipherGuard. We have a recording of that conversation. I'd recorded it. Every word. I'd kept my phone on my desk during Daniel's visit, audio app running. Michael played 90 seconds of it. Daniel's voice filled the room. I can make one phone call, Ava. Patricia pulls her funding, your company implodes, and you're back to bartending by Christmas. Patricia Holloway stood up. That's enough. I've heard enough. She walked to the front of the room, took the microphone from Michael, and turned to face the crowd. I'm Patricia Holloway, lead investor in CipherGuard. I've been in venture capital for 22 years. I've seen fraud. I've seen incompetence. I've seen family betrayal. She looked directly at Daniel. But I have never seen someone stupid enough to try to extort a founder in front of documented evidence of previous fraud. She turned to me. Ava, I'm doubling my investment. $8 million total. I'm also connecting you with my legal team to pursue charges against your brother if you choose to. The room erupted. Not in applause, in shocked murmurs. People turned to look at Daniel, who was still standing, face crimson, mouth opening and closing without sound. My mother found her voice. Ava, you can't do this to your brother. He's family. I looked at her for the first time in 4 years. Really looked at her. The pearl earrings, the perfect makeup, the woman who'd walked past me in a grocery store like I was invisible. You're right, I said quietly. He is family. That's why this hurts. But family doesn't mean I have to let him destroy everything I've built. He made mistakes, my father started. He committed fraud, I interrupted. He embezzled $2 million. He closed 3 companies to hide his crimes, and then he tried to blackmail me into giving him half of mine. You're vindictive, my mother said. Her voice shook. You've always been vindictive. Ever since you were a child, you couldn't stand to see Daniel succeed. Mom, I said it gently, which surprised me. I spent 4 years thinking you believed I was the problem, that I was jealous, competitive, unstable. But you didn't believe that. You knew Daniel lied, you just chose to protect him anyway. She opened her mouth, nothing came out. I'm not doing this for revenge, I continued, addressing the whole room now. I'm doing this because silence protects the wrong people. 4 years ago, I told the truth and lost my family. Today, I'm telling the truth again. If I lose them again, at least I'll know I didn't sacrifice my integrity to keep people who never really saw me. Daniel finally found his voice. You'll regret this. I'll sue you for defamation. You'll do nothing, Rebecca Martinez, our legal counsel, said from her seat. Every piece of evidence presented here is documented and verified. If you attempt to sue Miss Reynolds or this company, We will file a countersuit for attempted extortion and provide these documents to the FBI. I suggest you leave. Security, I'd asked 2 guards to be present, moved toward the doors. Daniel looked at our parents. Are you just going to sit there? My father stood slowly. Let's go, son. They left. All 3 of them. My mother gave me one last look, hurt, angry, pleading. But she followed my father and Daniel out of the conference hall. The door closed. 60 people sat in absolute silence. Then Marcus Chen started clapping. Slowly at first, then faster. Patricia Holloway joined him, then Jordan, then the entire engineering team. Within 30 seconds, the whole room was standing, applauding. I started crying. Not sad crying, relieved crying. 4 years of carrying this alone, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. Rebecca Martinez hugged me. You did the right thing. Did I? My voice cracked. Yes, Patricia said firmly. And now we're going to make sure Daniel Reynolds can never do this to another founder again. Michael Brennan submitted his findings to the FBI the next morning. I didn't have to be involved beyond providing testimony. The evidence spoke for itself. Daniel was indicted 3 months later on 6 counts of wire fraud and investor deception. I didn't go to the trial. I didn't need to. I'd already gotten what I needed, the truth on record, in public, witnessed by people who mattered. My parents sent one email 2 weeks after the all-hands meeting. My father wrote it. The subject line was, "Disappointed." The message said, "You have destroyed this family. Your brother made mistakes, but you chose revenge over reconciliation. We raised you better than this. Don't contact us again." I read it twice, then I archived it. I didn't respond. Here's what I learned. Some people will choose the comfort of their illusions over the discomfort of truth. My parents needed to believe Daniel was the golden child, the successful businessman, the son they could be proud of. Accepting that he was a fraud would mean accepting they'd been wrong for years. That's a harder pill to swallow than losing a daughter. So they lost me instead. And I let them. 6 months later, CipherGuard hit $50 million in valuation. We expanded to 87 employees. I hired 3 former victims of Daniel's fraud schemes, people who'd lost money in his collapsed companies, and gave them positions in our finance and operations departments. They understood what it meant to rebuild from betrayal. I moved to a new apartment in Fremont with a view of the water. I adopted a dog, a rescue beagle named Cypher. I started sleeping 6 hours a night instead of 4. I stopped checking my phone every morning to see if my family had reached out. They never did. On the 1-year anniversary of that all-hands meeting, I visited the coffee shop where Michael Brennan had first shown me the evidence. I ordered the same drink, black coffee, 2 sugars, and sat at the same table. I thought about that moment when Daniel had walked into my office with his blackmail folder, when he'd said, "You have until Friday at 5 p.m. I thought about my mother's voice, "Until you're ready to apologize to your brother." I thought about 4 years of silence, and I realized something. I'd spent so long waiting for my family to see me that I'd forgotten to see myself. I'd built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. I'd hired incredible people. I'd created something real and valuable and honest. I'd done it without shortcuts, without stealing credit, without fraud. That was worth more than their approval ever could be. If you're reading this and you've ever had to choose between telling the truth and keeping the peace, I want you to know something. The peace they're asking you to keep isn't real peace. It's silence. And silence is just another word for complicity. You don't owe anyone your silence, not even family, especially not family. If you've had to walk away from people who couldn't see your worth, type, "I walked away" in the comments. Or if you stayed and fought for your boundaries within your family, type, "I stayed and fought." Both are brave, both are valid, both require courage. Most people will never understand. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. I'm sitting in my office right now. It's 6:47 p.m. Exactly 1 year to the minute from when my mother walked in and demanded I sign over 50% of my company. The conference room where it happened is just down the hall. We're hosting a celebration tonight for hitting $75 million in valuation. I'm looking at the invitation list. 63 names. My team, my investors, my people. My family isn't on it. And that's okay, because I built my own.